Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL Clash of the Correspondents. My name's James, and today we're joined by two of our correspondents ahead of a big game, fingers crossed, in blank game week 18. First of all, let me introduce you to Jonny Pringle at FPL Pringle on Twitter. How are you, Jonny?
Yeah, good. Thanks, James.
And we're also joined by Sam Murray at FPL Seagull on Twitter. How are you, Sam?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
Sam, City away is always an easy game for you. I want to obviously just get both of your opinions before we get into the game itself specifically. And I must say, thanks to you both, because this wasn't the scheduled C.O.T.C this week. Thanks for stepping in for us at the last minute. But before we talk about the game, I just want to get both your opinions on where we think football's at the moment. So to timestamp this podcast, and it's an ever-changing situation, it's nearly 6 o'clock on Thursday night, UK time. We just heard Aston Villa's training grounds been shut today, so that brings doubts into several FA Cup games this week and perhaps the league programme next weekend. You guys both travel up and down the country, or at least obviously you did before coronavirus. Jonny, what's your feeling on football at the moment, and if we're in any danger of having a prolonged suspension or anything?
I've been quite optimistic about it continuing, but in the last few days I have started to become more pessimistic, and I think you're of the opinion, James, and I'm starting to agree with you, but I think a sort of delay is inevitable. I think with just the number of training grounds that are having to be shut down, is it just Cities and Villas? Has there been others in the Premier League?
Newcastle was bad, wasn't it?
Oh, of course, yeah, Newcastle.
Ago.
Yeah, this Villa one seems to be worse than Cities. They said there's a large number of people there, and there just seems to be more and more coming out all the time, doesn't it? And I mean, they seem to have coped with it so far because they seem to have squeezed, obviously, fixtures into this blank and double game week. But I think we are inevitably going to run out of time. I don't know how they're going to do it because obviously with the Euros, I'm not sure how easily that can be postponed again. I'm not sure whether they would postpone it just for the English league. So yeah, there's some tough decisions to make there.
Do you think, Jonny, that there's a case if we had to push back the Premier League season for a couple of weeks and it was just us that had the problem, do you think it's feasible that England might even pull out?
I think that's the only option. I don't think we'd have a choice. I think UEFA would probably make you do that. Any countries that seasons have to be postponed. Well, saying that, it's not just English players, is it? So I don't know. What
no, of course not. No, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they'd do.
Sam, what's your thoughts? Because you managed to get to the Southampton game. In fact, you blagged into 2 games, didn't you?
Yeah, I got down to the Sheffield United game and the Southampton game. And I had a ticket for the Arsenal game as well, which didn't quite get to that one because we got put into Tier 4 2 days before or so. And
we discussed this last month. Have you actually got fans at Brighton, mate?
I think I just got really lucky. There's some that got put in the lower bracket for every game and they had no chance of getting a ticket. So,
what's your thoughts on football continuing at the moment?
I think when the lockdown was announced, I was half expecting them to say, elite sport would stop for the next 3 or 4 weeks as well, and I wouldn't be too bothered if it did really without fans. I think doesn't really wouldn't bother me too much if they did say they had to have a break. I think we are getting towards the point where it's getting a bit silly with all the breakouts and the postponements. We could get to a point where there's no option, and with FA Cup games coming up as well, it seems like quite a relevant weekend really in the grand scheme of things. Going away to Newport for an FA Cup game when there's a pandemic going on, so we could afford to have a few weeks off, but break would have to be worthwhile for players coming back for training as well. So it's always difficult, isn't it?
Well, that's the other thing. The point I think is important to make about the idea of, say, a 2-week circuit break is there's not really much point in that from a player's perspective, because they'll need a break and then they need to start training again.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks, the players aren't going to stop. They're just going to carry on training, be it maybe from home, admittedly. But I don't think a 2-week break works. Yeah. I think it's either like a month or or not at all. And for some clubs, including my own Tottenham, obviously, like any further postponements, there's nowhere for the fixtures to go if we keep progressing in cup competitions. One suggestion I did hear, Johnny, was the idea of postponing the Carabao Cup for the rest of the season. What's your thoughts on that, mate?
Well, I was just about to say, actually, they could buy themselves a few slots by scrapping the FA Cup, couldn't they? But yeah, we need to keep the Carabao on. Carabao's better than the Champions League.
Ironically, though, that competition shouldn't have happened this year, I don't think. The Carabao Cup. It should have just been binned in pre-season. That
was the obvious one that they were talking about, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was weird that it wasn't cancelled. I'm not complaining now, but...
No, me neither, mate. Hopefully, you never know. Touchwood, maybe I'll see you down Wembley Way in April. Let's turn this into a positive light, and let's assume that football's going to carry on. Obviously, for yourself particularly, Johnny, loads of interest in your FPL assets ahead of the blank game week, whether people are carrying through or free hitting. Treble City seems to be on a lot of people's minds. Can we go back to the Chelsea game first? And can you just describe to us why that was so different and why maybe we hadn't seen that for City for so long?
So, the feeling before the game was sort of the same feeling that we'd had going into every game. I think City fans were nervous. We obviously hadn't been performing to the level that we had been doing. I don't think we'd beaten a top 6 team top 6 team away. That's not Arsenal for a year, 18 months or so. But it just seemed to click, didn't it? I do think the false 9 helps indirectly. I think the fact that he put De Bruyne up front got Bernardo back into his best position in centre mid. I think Foden on the left, still on the right, gave us width after having inverted wingers all season. And after the first 10, 15 minutes, I thought, oh God, here we go again. We're not playing well here. But then everything just seemed to click. And for the rest of the game, in the second half, it was like we were back. Like we're back in 2017, 18, 19 again. And it was really good to see.
There's a lot in that in terms of Foden and Sterling holding width and playing more like out and out wide players, because it feels like it's only a month or so ago Guardiola was talking about having them closer to a front man and getting in the box more. But this felt like old City where you made the pitch big and then you just exposed teams from there.
Yeah, it's something that we've talked about a lot as fans, that obviously we used to have Sane and Sterling on the left and right. And then we've seen it a couple of times this season, mainly in the Champions League when Foden's played. I think we beat Marseille 3-0 and then we played it against Olympiacos and looked okay. So yeah, it's good that we're starting to see it again, obviously against Chelsea and United.
This with a false 9 though, that's not going to happen against a side like Brighton though, is it?
No, I think the thing is, in big games away to teams like that, I think the false 9 is really useful. I was saying to some of my friends that our best performances in the last year or so have come with a false 9. United away in the League Cup last year, we went 3-0 up. Madrid away, and then the 2 games as recent as Chelsea and United. So it works in the big games, but I think in games like the upcoming one against Brighton, you do need just a striker in the box.
We'll come back onto assets in a sec. Sam, we only last spoke to you about a month ago, just before you went to Fulham. We previewed your game with the Tinkerman. We spoke about the importance for you of the Fulham fixture and then obviously the Sheffield United fixture. Looking at your results in 2020 makes a little bit depressing, reading of 1 home win, 5 league wins all season. It felt like at half time of the Wolves game, I'm thinking manager's really in trouble now. I can feel like on my timeline that the mood changing amongst Brighton fans to, I'm not sure I want this guy in charge anymore. What's the current feeling at the moment?
Yeah, exactly that. I think after that Arsenal game, I think Potter didn't do himself many favours with the however many changes, 6 or 7 changes I think it was to that team. And it did seem like a lot of fans were going towards the Potter out because didn't really give him much of a game. And the Wolves game, first half, felt like the game was over at half time really at 3-1. We don't look like scoring at the best of times. So after that performance, that first half performance, I think everyone was a bit negative. But that second half was just the complete opposite. Bit of fight, pressed them so much better, and the early goal from Maupay in the second half set up second half was just constant pressure from us. And after that point, it's funny how it changes. Everyone seems to be a bit more positive after that, and maybe because there was rumours that Potter was going to lose the players, but in that second half they fought well, and it's a bit annoying now that we've got this sort of break with the FA Cup game where I'm expecting 10 changes, and then City. It feels like we need another game just to build on that second half performance against Wolves.
I mean, a result against a team like City is certainly going to help continue confidence. But I mean, next to City, Leeds, and then you've got the rematch with Fulham, who are currently 3 points behind you with 2 games in hand. Then it's Tottenham and Liverpool. You're in a relegation fight, aren't you?
Yeah. We're kept on hoping the results would come and it would turn around, but going into the new year, and it looks like in that bottom 4-5 between us and Fulham. That Fulham game is very big. When you look at the games around it, yeah, it's not fun.
What do the fans want Potter to do with the team at the moment?
I think it's more back to basics. I think some of the decisions he makes are a bit questionable. I think the main one is Ben White in midfield. Everyone seems to be after him because he's such a good centre-back, and when he has played in the back three with Webster and Dunk, he's looked great. And when we've got players like Alzate and Proper and Gross who can play midfield, it seems strange to put him into the middle. So I think back to basics with positions, and it's tough because every week I see a new stat which tells us how unlucky we are and how we're playing so well and creating all these chances. So it's difficult to who to blame really, but yeah.
It feels like there's obviously Lamptey's been missing. We don't know at the moment if he's back for City or not, but it feels like in the games he's missed the last 4, and he also missed the Leicester away game before the Fulham game as well. It feels like there's a real lack of energy in the team. I mean, you highlight Ben White. He played right wing back at West Ham. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
So I mean,
exactly.
will he make a major difference, Lamptey?
Yeah, I think we've really missed him. I think you can't really replace a player like Lamptey. So when we don't have him available, I think it makes much more sense to go with the back 4, because putting Veltman in at right wing back or White there, like you said, you can't replicate what Lamptey gives you. So if we can get him back for maybe if it's not the City game, if it's that Leeds and Fulham double, if we can get him back for that would be so important.
Does this feel like a straightforward fixture for you, Johnny?
It should be. You thought West Brom at home would be a straightforward fixture, but
yeah,
I think nowadays with City, nothing's straightforward.
Why is that?
Well, it might be now. I mean, genuinely, over the last two games, I'm trying not to get giddy, but the last 2 games does feel like old City is back. Actually, I always take the piss out of me United mates for sort of celebrating false dawns, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But old City this season just been solid defensively, but just been slow. Haven't created as many chances. It's just been passive. It's just all the sort of symptoms of just a bad attacking team. And hopefully what we've seen in the last 2 games will make it click. And hopefully we'll see it against Brighton.
I think, look, winning fairly comfortably at Chelsea and Man United away inside sort of 4 days is going to give you every right to feel very confident, mate. And for yourself, Sam, we often speak about the bigger games better for Brighton. Does it still feel that way at the moment going into City away? Because you probably don't need reminding. You played them 6 times since you come up, scored 2 and conceded 20.
Yeah, City away is just a free hit for us, really. I wouldn't be surprised if Potter mixed it up, because I think we got that Leeds game only a few days after, I think on the Wednesday. So I'm not expecting anything from
Potter rotating? Surely not, mate.
Yeah, it'll probably surprise us all and stick with the same team. It is a free hit, City away. Yeah, not much more I can say. We're not expecting anything.
Yeah, we'll come back to your treble Brighton recommendations for free hitters in a minute, mate. Tell us, Johnny, about this centre-half pairing at the moment, because I mean, I mentioned it on the podcast as well. We'd had a brief offline conversation about sort of John Stones, because I wanted to know what the score was with Laporte Can you just, in your words, sum up why essentially at the moment you don't think that's going to change with Diaz and Stones?
I don't think I need to explain it. I think people have seen it.
But yeah.
Finally, last night, I got messages from people saying, bloody hell, I didn't realise Diaz was this good. I think people who watched us recently have obviously seen our defensive record improve, but then last night they actually saw why. And when people say, oh, what's going to happen with Laporte? Well, it's like, well, nothing's going to happen with Laporte. You can't play him over them two at the moment. I don't think there's anything wrong. It's not like he's been ousted out of the team. It's just them two are just on the best form I've seen them in. Oh, sorry, particularly Stones. Obviously, Diaz has only been there since the start of the season. But yeah, it's just really nice to see. It's just a really good partnership that's come out of nowhere a bit. And yeah, I think Pep has changed us slightly to be a little bit more defensive. And yeah, I think in the past, I've always been confident about winning games just because Pep City has been capable of scoring more goals than the opposition. But now, I genuinely feel like we're just not going to concede. If you score 2 goals in a game, I feel like that's it.
Surely that makes John Stones at 5 million unbelievable FPL value, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's just whether you'd stretch to... I think, yeah, value over Diaz. But I think if you can stretch to Cancelo, you should. I think Cancelo is really overdue some returns.
That's your preference then, to go Cancelo? I think we can see attacking return is imminent. Like every game, to be honest, every time we watch him. Any concern on obviously Kyle Walker's potential return on him?
Oh yeah, again, this is the thing. Is obviously the last time I was on the podcast, it was just before which game was it? It was just before
Tottenham.
that good. I thought it was just after. Or was it just before Tottenham? Oh no, it was just before Tottenham, wasn't it? Yeah. It was just before that good run of home games, and I remember saying, "Get Cancelo in, but be wary of rotation." But I think he just hasn't been rotated. I think what a lot of City fans think, including myself, was with Walker was he just gives you that protection from counter-attacks. He's so good at defending counter-attacks, but you just couldn't drop him. But now I think it's almost reversed in that Cancelo gives us so much going forward that you can't sort of drop in at the moment. So I think it's similar to the Laporte situation. I just can't see Walker getting back in until Cancelo drops the bollock. I can maybe see Walker playing some midweek games, but I think Cancelo's first choice now.
Yeah, I think I could see sort of like when you play Liverpool in a few weeks, for example, I could see him want to play Walker up against Mane and then Cancelo the other side. But in these games coming up, I think it's fair to say, look, you've got 3 league games in around about 8 days. Look, no one's going to guarantee that any Man City player other than Ederson, if he's available, is going to play all the games. It's the same as always. There is a rotation risk. But at the moment, Cancelo alongside Diaz and Stones feels quite safe, doesn't it? Almost for all 3, potentially.
I mean, like me and you have talked about this in the past. Obviously, trying to call which City players play is notoriously difficult, but Pep has made it relatively easy in the last month. And I think you're right in that them 3 seem as nailed as anyone.
Was the Tottenham game a changing point, essentially? Because I feel the Chelsea away game second half, Southampton away game, we defended really well second half. Something very different from City in terms of stepping off the ball quite a lot and saying, okay, we don't mind. We actually spend some time without the ball. Guardiola spoke at the weekend after the Chelsea game about actually you being a team that struggles in transition. And I think a lot of that is you haven't replaced a player like Leroy Sané, for example. But obviously, since the Tottenham game, Laporte hasn't played, right? Stones plays Burnley and Fulham. You keep a couple of back-to-back clean sheets and it just moves on from there. Is it just as simple as that? Is it almost the opposite to the fact we always overthink City? He's simplified things a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. And it's nice to see. I mean, Pep gets a lot of criticism for not really changing. And this is the first time he's sort of changed at City. I think you're right, but the Tottenham game was a bit of a catalyst. He signed his contract in the week before, didn't he? Yeah. And we were thinking, right, this might click us into gear. But then it was just all the same problems and more against Tottenham. And a lot of City fans, including myself, did start to question it. Think, have we made the right decision here? He's just going to be so stubborn. But then I think Pep sort of lit a fire under him, if you know what I mean. He dropped Laporte, he dropped Sterling. He started, remember he had that press conference where he just talked in a tone that he hadn't talked like at City yet. And like you said, he has gone back to basics. And then just slowly but surely, I think City fans have started to get his confidence back, because the team have been performing. And then, like I said, the last 2 games, the culmination is seeing us perform as well as we have done for 18 months. So I think we are all of a sudden quite optimistic.
Have you got City defensive at the moment, Jonny, in your FPL team?
Yeah, I've got Diaz. I've had Diaz since game week 10. I've got De Bruyne as well. I was a naughty boy and put De Bruyne in for Salah early this week.
Dangerous.
Yeah. And I want to get Cancelo. I was set on just having, I won't delve too much into my blank game week and double game week plans, but I was just set on having Diaz. And then I was going to free hit this week, but obviously the Villa and City game and getting moved, freeing my plans up in the air a bit. So I think I'm looking to get Cancelo as well.
What do you own, Sam, from City at the moment?
I've had Diaz for a while now. I think need to find a way to get De Bruyne in as well. But yeah, I wild-carded, and then that rearrangement and sudden lovely double game week for City is just throwing it all up. I don't know what I'm doing at the minute.
I've landed on Stones. I had Diaz pre-wild card and decided, well, I'll go and attack City again in 19. Then obviously the rearrangement happened. It's like, okay, right, I'll get Stones. I've got to get something. What you haven't got De Bruyne at the moment, Sam? Is that right?
No, not at the minute.
Am I right in saying you've probably got Mo Salah then?
Yeah.
Any thoughts to move that to De Bruyne for 18?
What, for 18?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a free hit. I'm free hitting this week.
Right, so that's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, that's covered,
then.
Yeah.
I take it'd be free City and your free hit then?
Yeah.
Any Brighton?
I don't think any Brighton players are going to make it.
What about Bernardo? It's 3.9, isn't he?
There we go. He'll be sub 3. Perfect.
Is there no confidence to go with, say, the keeper, Sanchez, and think there might be some save points in there? Or City haven't had any sloppy moments for quite a while, but we know they like to concede late goals, especially when we all own City defensive assets, about throwing in a Morpay as a 1 week punt and hope he gets you a goal or something? Or is it just, James, shut up?
Well, I can't see us... I don't know. Maybe a few months ago where City weren't looking at their best, maybe, but right now they seem to be back at the top of their game, and if we do score, it's not going to be more than one. So,
what's the thoughts on Sanchez just generally? Because I understand Matt Ryan's been told he can leave the club.
Yeah, I'm not too. I probably wouldn't have dropped Ryan in the first place, and Sanchez has done okay in the last couple games, but I don't think he's the keeper that really should be in goal for the next few seasons or whatever. It depends. If we do sell Ryan and he has been told he can leave, it leaves us quite weak in goal, and other teams would then realise that we're desperate for a goalkeeper and we start paying more money for keepers that are not worth that. So it'd be interesting to see if Ryan starts against Newport in the Cup, I think.
He'll probably go with Steele. He has been sub-keeper in most of the games, isn't he?
Yeah. I think it will be Steele, yeah, but maybe if he puts Ryan in, I don't know. Maybe
any sign of Christian Walton, who sat in my team for week and week and week, even though I knew he was injured, because I thought he was going to put some proper pressure on Ryan, and no one's seen him this season. But I believe he is fit now.
I think he got really unlucky because he was our second choice, and he would have come in for Ryan if he was fit, but he had that injury, and Sanchez got the nod instead. I think Potter did say somewhere about loaning him out possibly this month, but I don't think we'll see Ryan and Walton anytime soon. Sorry.
I still have nightmares about Christian Walton because he was the keeper when Wigan knocked us out of the FA Cup in 2018.
Didn't know that. Thanks, Jonny.
I just remember this lanky streak of piss in net catching everything.
Why does it always happen? You get random goalkeepers come from nowhere and they have the game of their lives. Why does it happen?
Yeah.
But interestingly, Sam, for free hitters, jokes aside, Sanchez and Walton or Steele is the cheapest combination of keepers you can have. I see teams with free hits thinking of going Darlow and Dubravka to play safe, for example, cost you 9.8, whereas these two will cost you 8.4, and you've got another 1.4 million to play around with. And the unpredictability of goalkeepers, If he saves a penalty, he'll get a good return, won't he?
Yeah, we're not going to keep a clean sheet, but maybe Sanchez in there he will definitely play against City. So get him in there. And I had Sam Johnson against Arsenal was quite fun counting the saves. So if he can get a few save points,
Listen,
maybe.
I own Sam Johnson. I weren't counting nothing. That shit got turned off, mate. There's no need for me to be watching.
I need every point I can get. I was focused.
One of the things I think people will be keen to know, Sam, is Bissouma is suspended, and that's probably a big blow for a number of people who'd have been obviously carrying players into the game week, although you're only expecting a 1-2 pointer. But what influence does he have on the side, and how big of a blow is it that he's going to be missing?
Yeah, it's a big miss. I think this season he's been our best player. I think he really has turned a corner after last season. A bit inconsistent, but he's a player you can rely on now. And even Potter doesn't mess about rotating Bissouma. But he came off at half time against Wolves because he looked like he was going to get sent off, and Proper came in, and Proper did quite a good job as well in there. So I think we got quite a lot of depth in the middle, and he'll be a miss, but I'm okay with him missing Man City if he's there for Leeds and Fulham.
Okay. Jonny, a few people talking about Gundogan. One asked me on my stream last week, and to be fair, they started the conversation with "Don't laugh, but I'm considering him." So I obviously laughed at that. He will fall in for people I think are quite interested in sort of 6 to 5 million range and don't really know where to go for the game week. Not so much on free hits, but for those carrying through. Chelsea's the best I've seen him play, I'd say, probably since he joined the club. Is there anything there in terms of suggesting that he might continue in that position? Because that was obviously more of Rodri playing on his own. And Rodri also played well, we've criticised. Or do you see him, for a game like this, going more like sort of sitting alongside Rodri in a double pivot?
I think he sort of played a bit of a hybrid role recently, especially with the false nines. But no, I don't think it's a totally outlandish shout. I think it was after West Brom game when he first scored, because Pep's always praised Gundogan for that ability. He always says Gundogan has the ability to sniff goals and he arrives well in the box, and the type of goals that you see him score are always from them cutbacks. He seems to be able to latch onto them as well as anyone. So yeah, he's not like I said, totally outlandish shout. I think the obvious thing is obviously play deeper than everyone else, but yeah, at the moment he's getting in the box quite well. So yeah, I wouldn't be against it.
3 goals in 4, 33 points in that period as well. So when he's getting the goal, he's hitting the bonus as well. 10, 11 and 9-point returns amongst that as well.
Yeah. It's just whether because obviously things can change so quickly all of a sudden. Like he could be playing with the 6th role instead of Rodri if Rodri gets injured or something like that, and you could transfer him out. Like I say, but I think in the short term, yeah, you can go for it.
What about Raz? Because I think a lot of people want to go, especially for free hitters, want to go double defensive or double attack, or as I saw FBL General put it, double attack, and Cancelo's one of the attack anyway. What about fitting Sterling in there alongside De Bruyne for the free hit? Is that something you'd recommend, or are you so secure at the back at the moment? Would you rather have, say, Cancelo and Diaz, for example, do you think?
I think the best 3 is Diaz, Cancelo and Sterling, if you can. Sorry, Diaz, Cancelo and De Bruyne. Yeah, Diaz, Cancelo and De Bruyne, sorry.
You nearly killed the community there, mate.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but they're the best 3 to have. Sterling's just been hit and miss all season. His confidence has sort of just seems to have taken a hit. He's just been so flaky, hasn't he? And he's just missed a lot of chances that he was putting away when he was in his peak in sort of 2019. And we're hoping he gets it back. He just seems to have lost that sort of conviction, and he's gone back to the sort of Sterling of old, where those people used to criticise. There was a chance in the United game, wasn't there, where he managed to get himself in a little bit, but then just hesitated and got the ball nicked off him. I've been comparing him to Son recently. Son would have just shifted that onto either foot and just rattled it in.
Yeah, he wouldn't think twice. I mean, Son technically obviously has the power that Sterling doesn't. Sterling has a little bit more guile in what he does. But I agree, even at that moment when he was running at Luke Shaw on Wednesday night, you didn't feel like he was going to beat him. And I think now you think, Sterling's going to rip him here. Or he's so composed in that area when he gets there, and he just doesn't feel like it's quite there. That said, I mean, when he hit the post against Chelsea, he showed amazing composure to wait his moment and was unlucky not to score. But I mean, 2 goals since game week 5, that's not good enough, is it? I mean, that's the same as Aubameyang's, I think.
It's just sort of. I'd say at the moment it's a punt, isn't it? I mean, it's a punt with a very good chance of coming off because it's a good home fixture and obviously still has a good record at home. But yeah, you could just come away from it frustrated. I think you could probably find better value.
He's streaky, isn't he? It feels like most seasons we have a period of sort of 10 weeks with Sterling. You go, he's only scored 1 or 2 in those 10. And then in the next 10, he'll get 8 or 9. It feels a bit like that with him. But at the moment, I might have him personally on a free hit, but I don't feel like I foresee that return particularly coming. Like you, I'd almost foresee it as a bit of a punt at the moment to go for him.
Yeah, like there is. So the definition of a punt is just off a hunch, isn't it? When there's no real stats backing it up, and I think that's what you get with him in a moment. So there's no real stats that suggest he's about to burst into form.
Looking beyond 18, because I don't think we can probably consider Sergio for 18. But for 19, do you think he could be of interest to people for the double?
Yeah, maybe. I keep getting asked this, and I keep giving the same answer. It's just like, well, just wait for him to get.
I keep saying that.
Wait for him to get, say, 15 minutes in a game, then wait for him to maybe start a game, or for Pep to give an indication that he's going to start a game, and then fire him in. Yeah, but it just seems to this knee injury seems to have really knocked him, and he plays 10 minutes and then Pep says, right, well, he didn't train the day after the game and he can't play this weekend. It's like, what, from 10 minutes? And I think everyone's waiting for the same thing to happen. I suppose there is a little bit of good news in that Pep has said that if he looks sharp in training, he will start against Birmingham at the weekend, which then could maybe put him in line for a start against Brighton or game after. So I think, we'll have the advantage of seeing how it goes on with a start against Birmingham, hopefully.
Jesus is back as well, was on the bench at United. He's 9.1 million. That just makes it murkier, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's the classic conversation, isn't it? I mean, it's just the worst thing in the world, spending 10 mil odd on a striker and it's just on the bench. So,
yeah, I feel like they'd be ruled out at the moment. What would you say, Sam, to Aguero, Jesus at the moment? Any thoughts?
I wouldn't go near Aguero or Jesus at the minute. I'm struggling enough to get De Bruyne into my team. So Jesus, I can't trust Jesus really. And Aguero is, if it was prime Aguero, I'd be all over it. But he doesn't really seem to have that run in the team anymore.
Are we past that, Jonny? Prime Aguero? Is that gone?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I've written him off quite a bit this season, just because of his injuries. I would wonder whether we'll see him play more than bits at a time for City again. Contract's up at the end of the season. Like I say, his knee injury seems to have really affected him. He was never he doesn't seem to have that good natural fitness. He always takes a few games to come back anyway. So, I think unfortunately, I hope he proves you wrong, and I hope he comes back and maybe fires us some more trophies this season. But I think he might well be off in the summer.
Can you foresee, like what you've seen at Chelsea? We know we said probably won't do it against sides like Brighton, but do you think we could see more of this kind of Sterling or Mahrez or Foden or De Bruyne kind of interchanging in a false nine, almost like a front four and go and play where you want or something, rather than having an out-and-out outlet like an Aguero or Jesus?
I still don't know. Like I said, in games like that, it sounds good, doesn't it? But then if you don't score for, say, half an hour, it sort of just looks a little bit all over the place. I think it works in big games like that where there's a lot of space and it does look dangerous. But I think in games like Brighton at home, Pep just likes just having a man in the box just to be there.
From your perspective, Sam, who would be left out of a City team and you think, great, I'm pleased he's not playing, other than the obvious De Bruyne?
Now, probably, well, I think I like Mahrez. I really rate Mahrez, and I haven't watched too much recently, but I always seems to have 4 or 5 shots a game, and he always looks dangerous against us. Probably Mahrez of the attackers.
Is he out of favour a bit, Jonny?
I think Mahrez is an interesting one. I was just going to say, I think opposition fans always seem to think that Mahrez is our most dangerous attacker. Some of my United mates always say that Mahrez is your best attacker. Why don't you play him more? And I think there is some merit in that. I was just thinking, even like against United yesterday, flatter to deceive. And but he does do well in fixtures like the upcoming one. He got a hat-trick against Burnley, didn't he? He got a load of decent points in the good run we had at the end of last season. So I think he is slightly out of favour. I said on the last podcast, he hasn't had a good season, but yeah, he does have the ability to just like flat track bully in games like this.
Oh yeah, he can go off in games like this. There's no doubt about that. And on Foden, on Bernardo Silva, briefly, I mean, Foden's been a mass frustration for a lot of people, including myself this year. Even feel like he could get you points off the bench because he's such a brilliant little talent. But do you think there's a coincidence that Chelsea was so good and those two were both back in the team?
No. We've been calling for Foden to play in big games so often. I think one thing that Foden has, he's very clinical. That finish was just brilliant. He seems to just, again, like Pep says, he always says about Foden, he just smells goals. We talk about how Sterling's quite hesitant in the box, and sometimes Mahrez can be. Foden is very direct. Like I said, players like Foden and Gundogan seem to have that ability just to score. And I think Bernardo just gave us legs against Chelsea, legs in the middle. Like I said, that's his best position, that sort of right centre midfield position. But yeah, it was good to see Foden there.
Bernardo Silva very quietly played 90 minutes in the last 3 league games, in varying positions in those 3 games, actually. I always feel like he should play. I feel like, particularly obviously now David Silva's gone, he's the one with that little bit of intricacy and guile that I feel like you miss in certain games. I think he's an important player for you, not to be an FPL consideration. What about Foden for a punt, for a free hitter, if someone was thinking about it and didn't want to pay the Sterling money?
I think, it's just an obvious rotation, isn't it? It's just, you don't know who's going to play. I mean, Torres had his COVID. Torres got COVID, didn't he? You just have to wait and see whether he comes back again. But if it wasn't, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Mahrez is fit, isn't it? Yeah, you got to sort of, even with Torres out, like I say, it's going to be 2 from 3 of Sterling, Mahrez and Foden. So it just, especially on a free hit, you can maybe take it if you've got him in your team and you know him going to play the next game. But if you free hit it specifically and you miss one of them 3 City assets that you've got,
gutted.
You'd be kicking yourself.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to clues of what we might see on the weekend in a sec. Sam, can you tell me anything about Andy Zakiri, who looked quite lively when he came on against Wolves, 5.0 forward? What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, he did look quite good. I think we signed him at beginning this year. He's just starting to get some chances now with Connolly and Welbeck injured. Came on at half time, and I think all I want to see really, the first impression was he was putting himself about, didn't stop running. I think he set up the Morpay where he won the penalty about 30 seconds into the second half. He set that up. He might not be our saviour, scoring loads of goals, but I think he's a handy little option to have if he does only get game time off the bench. Look lively.
What do you want up front? Is it Morpay? Is it Morpay and Welbeck? Morpay and Connolly? Welbeck, Connolly? What's the combination that you'd want?
Morpay for me starts. I think he can get himself back into some form. Welbeck, and it's a big if, but if he's fit, I think Morpay and Welbeck is a good partnership. Thing is, now with Welbeck, we're seeing he's picking up these injuries already, and it's difficult. Morpay and then probably Welbeck is the ideal.
Is Zakiri a threat to them, do you think?
If they're both fit, I don't think Zakiri gets in ahead of them. But like I said, I think good player off the bench.
And a word on Solly March. I think he always picks up interest. Again, we're not talking about free hits specifically, but just looking a little bit further ahead. You always look better when he plays on that left-hand side. Is he someone that might interest you once the fixtures ease up?
I think he's been one of our most improved players. I think I did give him a bit of stick at the beginning of the year. He looked like a bit more of a squad player than anything. But when he plays in that wing back position, he's been really good this season. So yeah, if we do have them, if we do go with wing backs, I think March is quite a nice option actually, and I'd probably consider him, but a bit later on down the line.
You mentioned the Newport game earlier, which is Sunday night, and I can tell you that's as bad a draw as you can get, mate, because they've given a few teams a real scare. They obviously beat Leicester in 2019, nearly beat Newcastle in the League Cup this year, should have beat Tottenham a couple of years ago as well. Yeah. Did you play them as well, Jonny? Newport 1 year, I think?
Yeah, we played them at Rodney Parade. We beat them 4-1.
I was going to say, you probably made it a bit easier than everybody else, typically.
It was 0-0 at half-time.
Oh, right. Well, there you go. I feel better now. We were 1-0 down at half-time, mate. Is that important at the weekend, Sam? Because obviously you had a great cup run where you played City themselves in the semi-final at Wembley a couple of years back. Is it important to the club? Could that be a bit of an uplifting, or do you think he's just going to throw it, basically?
I think a bit of both. I think he'll make, I'm expecting, again, like 9 or 10 changes, but that's not to say we're going to put out a bad team. I think our second team is obviously more than capable of beating Newport, but it's going to be difficult, and a cup run would be nice. Last season we got Sheffield Wednesday in the 3rd or 4th round, and that's as far as we got. We put out the reserves, and just the fans don't like it. The fans want a cup run, so I'd like to go far in the FA Cup. It would be good. Bit of positivity, get some wins.
It feels like, and it's interesting you mentioned the game with Wednesday last year, because it felt like December, January, you were having a real dip last year. I spoke to you about that Watford game. I still can't get over that was the team that I enjoyed watching so much against Arsenal in December, that won so well at the Emirates. Yeah. And then the team that laboured to a draw against Watford was unrecognisable in the space of 2 months with basically the same players. And I feel like there's a danger that it's spiralling the same way. The longer you go without a win, Sam, when you're good, I really enjoy watching you, but I haven't the last month or so. Yeah. And I think that's concerning on top of it. I always feel like you play good enough football that results will come, but I don't feel like it's really there at the moment. And I don't think losing to a side like Newport would do you any favours, actually.
No, not at all.
Apart, bring it up as well, because you've got Newcastle in game week 29. So if you're both out, trust me, people will be looking at Brighton assets in around about 7-8 game weeks. For yourself, Jonny, this Birmingham game, obviously you're in your cup final, the Manchester City Cup final against Tottenham in April. This Birmingham game, is he going to rotate the whole team, or should we panic if we see like Diaz, Stones and all them playing? That's not going to happen, is it?
I think he'll rotate as many as possible. I think the players who haven't played in the recent league games will come back in, because you don't really see like a raft of youth players come in for City. The players that do come in are very good players, because Pep obviously usually rotates in the league. You see a team that wouldn't go amiss in the Premier League anyway. But I doubt you'll see players like that. I think you'll probably see a few young players chucked in with Jesus, Mahrez,
Aguero, maybe.
Yeah, well, Aguero will start. You'll probably get Walker will probably get a game back in. Mendy will probably play. People like that.
Are any of these kids close on the fringe? Because we've obviously there'd be some names that have been on the bench recently, unrecognisable to a lot of people. Obviously, saw the young boy Delap play at the start of the season. Are any of these clubs? Do any of these players feel like they're close to breaking into the squad like Foden has?
The closest one was Eric Garcia, but he wants to go back to Barcelona
kind of
now.
Isn't he? I think it's done, isn't it? So people were saying.
Yeah, and I mean, good job. I mean, we could have ended up with. Pep wanted to keep Eric Garcia and sell John Stones. We very nearly sold John Stones. That means we wouldn't have bought Diaz. Well, we would have bought Diaz anyway, but yeah, it's worked out perfect there. I mean, there's Harwood Bellis as well, who's a good centre-back, but I don't think he's that close. Tommy Doyle, who's a centre midfielder. He might get a game at the weekend, but I don't think anyone's sort of close to Foden in terms of just regular game time in the first team.
Okay. Thanks very much for that, lads. Really enjoyable. I think for City, in terms of free hitters, it sounds like it's probably De Bruyne, Cancelo if he's had a break, and then whether you want to go one of the attackers or one of the defenders and go with it. Any disagreement on that view, Sam?
No, that seems about right.
You're not going to put us off and say you're going to go there and do the business or anything. You never know, mate. You never know.
We'll see.
Let's do predictions then. Jonny, you're the home team.
I would be confident. I'll go 3-0 City.
That's ballsy for a C.O.T.C prediction. Go on, Sam.
I want to back us to at least score. I'll say 3-1 City.
I thought you were going to say 6-1 or something. At the moment, the way City defend that, I agree with you, Jonny. 3-0 was what I had in mind as well. I don't feel like you're ever a side, Sam, that would get absolutely dismissed 5s or 6s or anything like that. But I do see it being fairly routine. The historical, the fixture suggests that City are well capable of scoring goals in this game as well. It's interesting, Jonny, just to close, the idea that the amount we spoke about Nathan Ake in the summer, about being a replacement for Laporte or a stand-in for Laporte because of how badly you missed him last year. I don't think Diaz and Stones was ever part of the plan, but sometimes you just fall on something and it works.
Yeah, I've said it loads of times in the last week or so. If you'd have told me 3 months ago that we'd have gone on a run of about 10 games conceding 1 goal and Laporte wouldn't play a minute, I would have just told you you're mental.
Are you going to win this league, mate?
Yeah, I think we will.
I honestly thought, to be honest, even before the West Brom game, I had concerns about you because of lack of creativity. But I think it's the performances recently. To be honest, it was even the second half performance at Southampton got me triggered to think, oh, this is something a bit different. Something's happening here, actually.
I think it's what's happened to other teams as well. Like I said, I think you were right in that I was worried about Liverpool running away with their fixtures, but they've had bad 3 results. Very unlike them to drop points against teams like that. And all of a sudden we find ourselves, we could be above them with our games in hand. United have come into it. I think this is why yesterday was so big for us. I think City fans did start to get a little bit worried, like, are United catching us? Are they better than us at the moment? I do think they'll be up there at the end of the season. But I think yesterday was nice for City fans to give us that reassurance. We are better than United and we should be finishing ahead of them.
Any thoughts on the title race, Sam?
I think when the teams are all this close, I think I'll back City to win it. I think they're favourites again for the title, and the way the other teams are playing, I think it'll be close, but I back City.
And yourselves, do you think you can stay up?
Yeah. I think. I don't know if I'm.
There's definitely 2 teams worse than you, mate.
But yeah, that's. You'd like to think Sheffield United and West Brom have gone between us and Fulham. The others, I think we'll be okay. I hope we'll be okay.
Yeah, I think it might come down to sucking Newcastle back into it would do you a favour as well, mate. That'll breed a bit of confidence. You can start seeing what's above you as well. All right, guys, really enjoyed that. Thanks again so much for stepping in and helping us at the last minute there, guys. C.O.T.C next week will be back on Thursday. We'll be previewing Liverpool and Burnley in a double game week with Dan Lord, FPL Loco Lord, Jack Turner at Turfy Topper. Other than that, enjoy your weekend, everybody. Cue music, please, man, child.